thank you everyone for joining for our first digital, we wish it was a real life, but that's life, of 2020, first digital pitch event. And we already discussed with you how it will go. We will start with a quick presentation of Bold and our investors who are present today. And then we will go to the pitch event. So today we have some startups from the cohort of Station F L'Oreal Acceleration Program. Hi everyone and welcome. And from an investment side, we have a few companies joining and two venture fund, and then also FAB, which is both a community and early stage VC company. And of course, on Bold side, on L'Oreal, we are here with the whole Bold team. We were trying to have a very good scope from tech to B2B to consumer brand, and also, of course, with the sustainability angle, which is key to us. So as I said, we will start with an introduction and then we'll go for a pitch. So a few words about Bold. Bold is a strategic corporate venture fund of L'Oreal. We make the minority investments. So our preferred ticket size, I would say, will be around 10%. We ask for an observer board seat, so we don't ask for any voting or veto rights and so on. So you keep, as a startup, as a founder, your independency. We don't have any specific ticket size, meaning that we can invest from, I don't know, 100,000 euros to 10 or 20 million euros. And we also like to invest with impact, meaning that all the investment which we make corresponds to our ethical, equality, and sustainability charters we have at L'Oreal. So free investment verticals, very quickly, we invest in brands and services to brands, which could be digital and physical. We invest in technological breakthrough. We focus a lot on the green science and biotech and new actives. And also we make an investment in business enablers, whatever innovation it can help a company to advance on the supply chain, manufacturing 4.0, IT, or HR. And in terms of the global themes, as I said, it's public information. That's our top priorities, let's say, what we are looking for when for startups when we make the investments. So it's sustainability is the key for us, and that's why it starts with sustainable beauty. It could include as a brand, it could include the packaging, it could be the new molecule, which is an alternative for a petrochemical. Personalized beauty, of course, we have an interest in that, and today I think we have also conversation about that. Clean, natural beauty, health and wellness, especially after COVID, you know that health and wellness has accelerated, and it includes all the services like telemedicine and even maybe going into mental health, even if we know it's highly regulated depending on the country. New aging solution, of course, green science, multicultural beauty, beauty tech, data management, and new beauty for new generation. It's kind of a wild card what the beauty consumer would want to have in 10 or 15 years from now on, and I think it's very exciting. Of course, what we say, we invest more than it's not about money because we are strategic. Of course, it's about money, but it's not only about the money. It's we're strategic for venture funds, so it means that we do open the doors and we do connect with L'Oreal experts, and that's, I think, our unique proposition on the market, because we keep a minority investment, so the founder and founding team keeps the total independency, but at the same time can rely on the ecosystem of expert, and of course with our global presence it gives a good support across the world. So because we do have operations in China, in Southeast Asia, in the US, so we have a global presence, and that could be helpful in scaling the business and operations for a startup. And I'll let Borja to present our L'Oreal Station F Acceleration Program.
Good, thank you, Guzel. So hello, everyone. I'm Borja. I lead the Digital Open Innovation team at L'Oreal, and I'm the program manager specifically for L'Oreal's accelerator at Station F. Our team contributes to both what we call the second wave of digital transformation for L'Oreal, and more particularly, we scout for solutions that are going to be focused in reinventing the consumer experience. So very much focused around digital services, but also new ways for consumers of experiencing beauty. For this, we manage different programs. It's really end-to-end, from scouting to framing to running partnerships between L'Oreal and startups. And more specifically, speaking of the program that we run at Station F, it is a 6 to 12 months program. It is based on 3 pillars. The first one being providing access to the participating startups to the Station F campus and all of its resources that will help them really grow during the time that they'll be part of our program. The second pillar is mentorship and upskilling. It's really the knowledge that we can share as L'Oréal, as the #1 in beauty that can help these startups also progress in their objectives. And the third is growth opportunities. So it's connecting them to anyone from investors to L'Oréal prospects, to retailers, and providing communication opportunities for these startups. We think also this is a great value during the duration of the program. We're very happy today to have a representation of different projects. If we go to the next slide. So our program started in the beginning of 2018. In total, it has been already 34 startups that have participated, coming from 12 different countries. And as you can see here in the slide that represents all of the projects that have been through, we started with a focus that was a bit more on the D2C brands and less so in the services part. And the more we become a source of new services for our own digital services team internally at L'Oréal, the more we've been focusing on this. With also, if I would have to note one more vertical that we've added along the way, is a focus on tech for good. 2 of the startups that we have represented today to pitch are the winners of our first contest of Beauty Tech for Good startup contest that we launched this year together with Vivatech.
Hi, everybody. So I'm connecting from California. As you can see with this first slide, I'm an ex-CEO of Lancôme, so knowing well L'Oréal and having a lot of respect for the bold team. I am a board member, French Tech ambassador, and I spent 6 years in the Silicon Valley and also in the tech company Orange, back and forth with a lot of connection with Google, Facebook, and a lot of data companies. Slide 2, I think it's the most important. It's the portfolio where I invest. So the fund is seed stage. It's a fund of 10 million as an ambition, with categories such as femtech, women wellness, clean beauty, sustainable fashion and fabrics, and Six is about pregnancy test and all about embarrassing problems from women. Bloomie is about wellness and sexual wellness. Elsa Youngman is a doctor, the only French one in the portfolio because it's US company. She's about clean beauty and sensitive skin. Fox Eye is about a new way to put eyelashes in 15 minutes. Good Light is about gender fluidity and identity. CarePep is about colored hair and damaged hair and biomimetism. And in fashion, there is 2 deals that we have done. 1000 Fell with sneakers that are upcycled and recycled, and Kintra that is replacing, in fact, the nylon and polyester in order to save our ocean and to try not to be just luxury items that take care with organic cotton of the impact. But so the last deal that is not on this chart is Bubble. We have just invested 1 month ago, and Bubble is about skincare for Gen Z. She's leveraging the power of influencer, and again, it's US companies only. I'm very delighted to listen to you today and to learn from your ecosystem and your ideas, because it's always very rich to listen to other founders. Thank you for your time.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Camille from Utopia. So Utopia is a VC fund based in Paris and New York, with a very specific angle because we only invest in what we call consumer startups, while the startups that are rethinking the way we eat, we live, we sleep, we take care of ourselves. We were funded in 2015, and so far we have invested 90 million euros and have 150 million under management. So still some money to invest in new companies. Our investment focus is, as I said, so consumer startups in terms of industries. So we cover industries in the space. So beauty and well-being is a very important one for us, but food and beverage also, fashion, home, leisure, and cities. We invest at quite early stage, from inception to 10 million euros in revenues. our sweet spots are companies that are already starting to sell. We are a French-focused fund, but with an international mindset. So most of our startups are based in France, but Europe and the United States is a game field for us too. And we like to lead our investments from C to Series A, which means investment from 1 million to 7 million euros in companies with enterprise value under 25 million. What we look for, I think it's the same as many funds, but we are looking for very ambitious founders with a strong vision and very aligned with our projects. We are looking for outstanding products. We know we invest in brands, but if there is no good value proposition on the products, then it's worth nothing. So product is very important to us. We are looking for large market opportunities and of course for scalable business model, and something that is not on that slide, but values are very important to us, and the responsibility of our companies are too. When I say values, so our values are, we have 3 values, which are ambition, care, and transparency, which are really important to us as a team and for the company we invest in. And actually, next slide. As a society, as a company, we try to be living by the same rules that we like our portfolio companies to have. So in terms of governance, Utopia is an entreprise à mission and is working on the B Corp certification. We are quite advanced in terms of gender equality, since 50% of the team is female, and 40% of the portfolio companies are led by women too. We are also committed to give back a percentage of our capital gains from the fund to a charity. And last slide, important, is our portfolio. So far we have invested in 25 companies. So you can all see them. So many of them are in the beauty, Même Cosmétique, Merci Andy, Oh My Cream, La Beauté, and Ocaran. But we have also invested in fitness company like Dynamo or Olibi, which is one of our latest investments in the yoga space. We invested in fashion with Pollen and Organic Basics. Small word about the team. So for now we are 6 people, and we have someone new joining the team beginning of November. You can see everyone with both finance and entrepreneurial background, because we are really involved with the company we invested. So it's important for us to mix the backgrounds of the team. And that's it. You can follow us.
Thank you, Camille. I will go for the Raise Ventures, and I think Francois is with us today. So I'll let you connect with your presentation.
Hi everyone, so I'm François Collet, so I'm from Raise Ventures. So basic presentation of our fund. So Raise Group is private equity group investing in buyouts, in real estate, in impact, and in venture. And the basis of the group is an endowment fund called Raise Chiapa, which is a philanthropic entity giving loans to startups and a lot of accelerator programs with the startups. It helped 300 startups in the past, including Mano Mano, Miho, Cheers. And this endowment fund is financed through a give back of the teams of Raise. So basically, we give back 50% of our carried interest. So the value added we gain from the investment to this endowment fund. And all our shareholders also gave some money also to this endowment fund. Regarding our portfolio, so we have 14 investments so far. In L'Oréal space, we are investor in Respire. We are also investor in some others DNVB like Bergamot. We are investors also in fintech like FinFrog or Mooncard. And so we basically invest in early stage companies, ticket from 1 to 4 million. But we stay opportunistic, meaning that we invested in HiSpear when they were doing zero turnover, and we want to stay. We can stay very long in the company because we have an evergreen structure, meaning that we can stay 15 years in a company. We don't have to give back the money to our investor too fast. And we have a team of 6 members doing this from Paris.
Very happy to meet all of you guys. I'm Christophe, I'm the co-founder of AOLab, a retail analytics startup. So we all know with COVID-19, e-commerce penetration has increased quite a lot. In a matter of few months, the number of transactions, according to Content Square, has increased by like 59% for cosmetics in a few weeks or months. This can be great for e-commerce, but it can be quite messy as well. If you look at the availability of some brands on some online marketplaces, you can find for one single brand thousands of competing offers and hundreds of active sellers. And very often, you have a very significant price discount versus the price recommended by the brand. So it can be quite messy, and it can have some significant pain points for the brand. In this context, there is a strong need for brands to have access to data and to retail analytics. And according to some players like Global Market Insights or Business Wire, this market for e-commerce analytics is going to grow quite a lot. And they say that it should exceed $20 billion by 2025. So we are talking about quite a lot of money in this global market. And this is where we step in at AOLab. What do we do? At AOLab, our value proposition is that we collect public data and we leverage our proprietary technology to provide brands with actionable, user-friendly data to optimize their online distribution. And what makes us special? Then, well, first of all, we are language and category agnostic technology, so we can help any kind of brands for any kind of geographies. Then we provide brands with a structured data set, which means that they can have access to very granular data, but as well have access to high-level aggregations on all kinds of filtering. Finally, we provide data through UI, which is considered by our clients as extremely user-friendly. So we have a lot of good feedback from our clients about the way to access the data. The company was founded by 2 guys with 2 different profiles. So François Misselin is the CTO of the company. He's an engineer by training. He was coming back from the Bay Area, where he worked in the US tech company for a number of years. And I'm Christophe. I used to work at BCG and strategy consulting. And I worked as well a number of years at Amazon, where I was a director. We are a team of more than 10 people. We are an international team. We have Chinese and Russian nationals. We are all based in Paris, and we are located in Station F in the L'Oréal Beauty Tech program. And we already have, next slide, please. We have already a significant portfolio of clients, and in all kinds of market segments, mostly about beauty with people like L'Oréal, Coty, Sisley, and some more. We work as well in fashion with people like Lacoste, but we recently signed up Balenciaga, which belongs to the Kering Group. And we work as well with players like Pernod Ricard for the wine and spirits market segment. And we get very, very positive feedback from these clients. And we are right now expanding our reach with clients such as L'Oréal and Coty, both in Europe and in the US. Now we want to raise some funds. We are targeting an amount of 2.5 million euros. What do we want to do with that? We want to strengthen our tech team to scale up our tech platform. We want to create a sales team to have a bigger portfolio of clients. We always want to target big global companies, and we want to keep on innovating to increase our basket value. The milestones we have in mind would be to reach a significant ARR milestone by the end of next year, in end of 2021, and prepare a Series A in 2022. I did not mention to you that we are a SaaS B2B startup. As you understand, we operate in this fast-growing market segment of e-commerce analytics. And if we move on to the next slide, the way we see the company is we want to be, in a few years' time, a global leader for retail analytics on a very fast-growing, very dynamic market field. Thank you.
Thank you, Christophe. Maybe I'll go over the first question. Could you please precise what is your revenue model? Thank you.
Yes, we are a SaaS B2B startup, so we charge a monthly fee, which depends on the scope of data we provide. Typically, the number of brands we will cover, the number of websites, the number of countries. And we are talking about basket values, which can be between, let's say, tens to hundreds of euros per year.
In terms of competition, who are you facing generally?
One usual name is Profitero, which is a player which has a global outreach both in Europe and the US. The kind of feedback we get from some clients, such as L'Oréal, that we are in fact, in some cases, gaining market share over Profitero because our UI is considered as better, easier to interact with. And we are in a situation when some players want to one-stop shop, and they really enjoy the kind of access to data we provide. And we have a few special features. I think we know really well how e-commerce works, and we can provide our clients with some very specific KPI and metrics, which are extremely useful. And I think there is a fast-growing maturity in terms of e-commerce know-how among brands, and they really want to have access to some specific metric that we can provide. And it's much more than price monitoring, clearly.
Christophe, what's your plan to become global? Because you've got great brands and retailers, but they're mostly French. Is there a plan to scale in the US as you showed that your team is multicultural?
Yeah, the way we do is right now we leverage some global companies which are based in Europe because it's just easier. And as an illustration, we started working with Coty in the US, in New York City. And we are doing the same with L'Oréal. So we leverage this kind of European footprint to get access to the US, but it's just step one. What we would love to do at some point in time would really be to have a base in the US and to leverage this new base to get market share in the US. But the way we do it now, we leverage our existing connections to get a coverage in the US, but as well in China. For instance, we work exclusively for Pernod Ricard in China. And we have a Chinese know-how. We know how to get access from Chinese websites, and we have Chinese team members. And like this afternoon, I signed up a contract for India as well. So it's not only European.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you go through a business case maybe and just explain us a bit more what do customers love the most about your solution?
Of course. Many companies, many brands need to increase their digital activity, their digital revenue. One quick way to do it is to start working with Amazon. And this was out of reach some years back. But when they do so, they don't want to do it in a messy way. So there are a lot of discussions about new commercial agreements, such as gating. A gating agreement is a commercial agreement where the brand will ask Amazon to clean up the marketplace, to clean up this messy situation and say, please remove all these sellers. And here we step in and we are going to make sure that this agreement is enforced. And then the next step is advertising. Because in this context, some brands want to allocate some advertising spending to the right place. For instance, if they sign up a deal with Amazon on a 1P model, they want to make sure that the advertising goes to the right place. And what we can show is that in some cases, the agreement is not properly enforced, and some transactions will go to all kinds of messy 3P sellers, in which case the advertising spending is suboptimal. So we provide a very comprehensive overview of what's happening online to make sure that the brand gets the rewards they expect. So it's a very comprehensive data set, a dashboard to say, okay, this is what you want to do in terms of online distribution. We put in place the metrics to make sure that your agreement is optimal and you get the reward that you expected.
So my name is Benjamin Garzillo. I'm the founder of Juste Paris. We are a brand offering custom hair care. And I will now show my screen. Donc, moi, j'ai toujours été très surpris par l'industrie cosmétique, en particulier par les produits capillaires, parce que chaque année, il y a un peu la même mécanique qui se reproduit. Il y a de nouveaux produits qui sont lancés, qui sont forcément meilleurs que ceux de l'année précédente. Et en tant que consommateur, on se retrouve un peu plus perdu au milieu de milliers de références, que ce soit dans les rayons ou sur les sites des distributeurs. Et on a un peu du mal à choisir. Et moi, je trouve ça d'autant plus frustrant que trouver un produit qui répond à des attentes simples, ce n'est pas évident, à savoir une composition clean aujourd'hui sans renoncer à l'efficacité. C'est pour ça que j'ai décidé de créer Juste, pour ne plus avoir à chercher, pour ne plus être déçu. On propose à chacun d'entre vous d'élaborer une formule naturelle et sur mesure, un shampoing juste pour vous, en moins de 1 minute. Alors, 1 minute, c'est le temps qu'il vous faut pour élaborer votre profil de cheveux sur notre site internet. Et 1 minute, c'est aussi le temps qu'il nous faut au laboratoire pour fabriquer votre shampoing. Ça, c'est rendu possible parce qu'on a passé 2 ans à développer notre propre technologie de production pour rendre scalable la fabrication de formules sur mesure. Et c'est un véritable avantage concurrentiel parce que la production, c'est une grosse barrière à l'entrée pour de nouvelles marques qui souhaiteraient s'y lancer. Alors justement, si on parle du marché, c'est un concept qui existe depuis quelques années aux États-Unis, qui connaît un développement assez prometteur. Il y a plusieurs marques maintenant qui sont en concurrence sur un segment qui pèse plusieurs centaines de millions de dollars. C'est en train d'arriver en Europe, mais il y a une véritable opportunité à saisir en termes de timing. Et là, ça devient essentiel d'exister au-delà du concept de sur-mesure, mais en tant que marque avec des valeurs qui résonnent sur le marché local. En ce qui nous concerne, nos valeurs, elles sont portées par notre nom. La première, c'est juste pour vous. Ça veut dire sur mesure, bien sûr, mais ça veut aussi dire respectueux de votre santé avec une composition saine. La deuxième valeur, c'est consommer plus juste. Pour réduire notre impact environnemental, on offre des packagings qui sont 100% recyclés et on réduit le gaspillage parce qu'on ne produit que ce que l'on vend. Derrière ça, il y a une équipe d'une dizaine de profils seniors qui travaillent essentiellement sur les métiers de la cosmétique et du e-commerce. Et on est également coaché par des leaders de ces 2 métiers. Alors L'Oréal dans le cadre de l'incubateur à Station Web sur la partie cosmétique et showroomprivé.com dans un autre incubateur sur la partie e-commerce. Si on regarde notre track record, alors on a fait un pré-lancement en 2019, d'abord pour tester à la fois notre positionnement sur le marché français, pour tester notre capacité à produire et aussi tester comment se comportait notre e-commerce. Et en 2020, on a franchement accéléré. On est en train de réaliser un BP qui est 2 fois supérieur à ce qu'on prévoyait de faire en début d'année sans avoir levé les fonds qu'on cherchait à ce moment-là. Voilà. Pour la suite, on va tout de même ouvrir une nouvelle recherche de financement pour aller plus loin dans un plan qu'on veut plus ambitieux. À court terme, on prévoit d'étendre notre gamme dans le capillaire parce que c'est là où on a une expertise et c'est un marché qui pèse 1,5 milliard en France. Et là, on a déjà plusieurs produits dans le pipe de R&D qui sortiront prochainement. À moyen et long terme, l'idée, c'est d'identifier des segments sur lesquels la personnalisation apporte une valeur ajoutée et de se servir de s'appuyer sur notre technologie pour entrer sur ces segments avec l'ambition de faire du sur-mesure le nouveau standard de l'industrie. Voilà. Merci.
Bonjour, Muriel de l'équipe Bold également. J'avais une petite question pour vous en termes de positionnement prix. Comment vous vous placez?
Alors, je vais peut-être arrêter le partage d'écran. Alors aujourd'hui, on a un prix qui est fixé à 20 € le flacon de shampoing de 150 ml. Sur le marché français, le marché, c'est 70% de mass market en France qui est autour de 5 € le price point moyen. Et 30% restant, c'est sur, on va dire, le début de haut de gamme et haut de gamme. Donc, c'est ce qu'on va trouver en parapharmacie autour de 15 € et ça va jusqu'à plus de 40 €. Nous, en termes de positionnement, un des tours de force qu'on a accompli en 2020, c'est de montrer qu'on n'est pas uniquement sur du haut de gamme. Une part importante de nos clients viennent du mass market.
Et donc, font le switch d'un parfum à 5 € vers un parfum à
shampoing,
20 €, avec d'un shampoing, pardon, mais avec la promesse de tout ce que vous indiquez derrière.
Oui.
D'accord. Merci.
Moi, Benjamin, je suis une grande fan de ce que vous faites, mais ma question, elle est plus si vous devenez global, comme il y a une saturation totale du marché et que beaucoup de gens ont fait le claim Clean Beauty ou Customized Beauty, ont levé massivement en dépensant énormément en marketing et en coûts d'acquisition. Quel pourrait être le fait que tu arrives plus tard, tu n'es pas encore aussi gros qu'eux et que tu peux avoir un unfair advantage par rapport au reste? Bien sûr, la profitabilité, j'imagine bien que quand tu parles à L'Oréal, ils t'en parlent, mais est-ce que tu as une logique qui pourrait permettre d'aller plus vite sans cramer autant d'argent, avec tout le respect que j'ai pour Prose, et je sais qu'il y a un investisseur qui n'est pas loin. Voilà.
Alors, d'abord, je trouve que l'un dans l'autre, c'est une excellente nouvelle qu'il y ait plusieurs marques qui soient sur la personnalisation, parce qu'en fait, ça crédibilise ça comme un segment à part entière. Et on pourrait voir, d'une certaine façon, de dire que ces marques, elles se font concurrence. On pourrait aussi voir les choses autrement en se disant que c'est la personnalisation qui va devenir le nouveau standard et qui va venir concurrencer toutes les autres marques qui n'en font pas. Ça, c'est le premier point. Et je pense que dans le haircare, il y a une vraie opportunité d'en faire un standard de l'industrie. Il y a d'autres verticaux auxquels je crois fortement, qui ne sont pas forcément des verticaux qui ont été exploités aujourd'hui. Ce n'est pas le sujet aujourd'hui, mais voilà, je pense où il y a vraiment, si on se met dans la peau du end consumer, il y a vraiment une valeur ajoutée à les adresser. Donc, un des sujets stratégiques, c'est d'être le premier à adresser ce vertical-là qui n'aurait pas encore été adressé. Et après, en fait, au sein des verticaux existants, je pense que les valeurs de marque, voilà, ça devient un critère de différenciation majeur. Il y a des habitudes de consommation qui ont quand même grandement bougé. Là, pendant cette période-là, on a gagné des années sur la maturité du e-commerce par rapport à ce qu'il y avait avant. Et donc, le business model traditionnel d'avoir des coûts d'acquisition presque à perte, en tout cas, nous, c'est pas du tout ce qu'on a éprouvé en 2020. Donc voilà, je pense que à la fois le marché il transite vers du online, à la fois maintenant le sujet c'est de se différencier par les valeurs et d'exister au-delà du concept.
Et en termes de distribution, aujourd'hui vous êtes online?
Ouais, alors on a un concept qui est par nature, qui marche surtout très bien online, parce que le produit, pour le fabriquer, il faut que vous répondiez à un diagnostic. Il faut que vous répondiez à une dizaine de questions. Donc, le poser sur l'étagère d'un Sephora, c'est en l'état pas possible. Après, il y a des circuits de distribution alternatifs qui sont hybrides, qui sont tout à fait possibles, qui faisaient partie de notre feuille de route qu'on a dû changer à cause des conditions sanitaires. Je parle des salons de coiffure notamment. En fait, on a une vraie opportunité. On l'a décelé en début d'année, mais on n'a pas pu aller plus loin avec les salons de coiffure parce que on a une proposition de valeur hyper riche pour les coiffeurs. On pourrait leur confier la réalisation du diagnostic capillaire. Donc, ils font ça avec leurs clients pendant le moment de la coupe de cheveux. Et nous, derrière, on réceptionne les résultats, on élabore la formule et on le ship directement au end consumer. Et là où la proposition de valeur est intéressante pour le coiffeur, c'est qu'il n'y a plus d'immobilisation de stock. Aujourd'hui, les coiffeurs sont des acteurs qui font en moyenne 100 000 € de chiffre d'affaires. Il n'y a pas de coût d'entrée. Donc ça, c'est le premier point. Et après, ce sont aussi des acteurs qui cherchent beaucoup à se différencier de leurs voisins. Et là, malheureusement, aujourd'hui, ils se battent tous en duel avec des marques qui sont un peu les mêmes d'un acteur à l'autre. Et donc là, il y a une vraie offre différenciante où on passe sur du conseil. C'est-à-dire que le produit final que va recevoir le client, il est vraiment lié au conseil du coiffeur et à la façon dont il a diagnostiqué son cheveu. Donc voilà, c'est une piste alternative. Là-dessus, on a plusieurs salons pilotes tout de même avec qui ça fonctionne assez bien. Mais voilà, ça a été un effet de vase communicant puisque le e-commerce est plutôt bien porté.
Bonjour Benjamin, j'ai une petite question pour toi sur la rétention que tu as sur le produit et notamment, enfin c'est super si pendant le Covid a pu te permettre d'une certaine façon de gagner plus de clients à ce moment-là. Est-ce que tu as déjà un peu de recul sur la rétention de ces clients-là et en général d'ailleurs
Oui, alors deux choses. La première, c'est que on a effectivement, enfin, je pense que on avait commencé à accélérer avant le Covid. Donc nous, il y avait aussi un sujet de comprendre quel était le winning triptyque pour arriver à recruter nos clients. C'était à base à la fois d'optimisation de nos tunnels d'achat et à base de trouver les bons canaux de recrutement pour nous. Et donc, ça avait déjà commencé avant le Covid. Ça a accéléré avec le Covid. Et après, notre crainte, c'était qu'à la suite du Covid, ça retombe. En tout cas, à la suite du premier déconfinement, ça retombe. Pas du tout, en fait, ça a continué d'accélérer à ce moment-là. Pour tout dire, on était très petits l'an dernier. Et donc, notre focus principal, c'était vraiment de grossir. On s'est vraiment concentré sur l'acquisition. La rétention, c'est maintenant un sujet, je pense, essentiel pour nous. Ce n'est pas le sujet sur lequel on est le plus fort. Ce qui me fait dire ça, c'est qu'il y a un gros écart entre les taux de satisfaction qu'on mesure et le repeat order qu'on pourrait espérer derrière et qu'on n'atteint pas. Les chiffres qu'on fait, repeat order malgré une croissance agressive. Mais je pense que voilà, quand on fait que du e-commerce, il faut qu'on soit best in class à la fois sur l'acquisition et aussi sur la rétention. Et nous, on a encore un peu de chemin à faire sur la rétention, notamment dans les processus clients qu'on va proposer.
Okay, that's an honor to share this moment with you. And I speak under the control of the boss, Monsieur Barbier. So we are a French brand of grooming products, and we would like to share with you some tips and knowledge about the digital strategy we have, which is quite unique. So I will try to share some slides. Okay. So probably you notice that in many cases, brands choose to approach e-commerce by launching an e-shop, but quite fast, it looks like a Sisyphus myth because that's an endless effort to recruit customers at a very high cost with quite low recurrency, and even the so-called communities are more and more volatile. So what we try to do in our approach is to make members. So we are part of this new membership economy, and we define our proposition as the following, which is grooming as a service. So mainly people will enter the community by having a subscription to razor blades, but also to any kind of products they want to. That's a very flexible subscription. You can cancel when you want, you can change frequency the way you want to. And then they discover the range of product by one-click purchases on their account. So they get a wide range of products. And over time, we enrich this relationship by pushing them to contribute to the development of new products, to giving them some tips, and to exchange with them about the beauty for men. From a business point of view, what it looks like, first, we want to decrease the churn rate by constantly enriching the value for the members. So there are very different techniques to do that. And the target will be to have less than 5% of churn rate per month or per occurrency if it's not per month. And then to have more and more upsells. And to do that, we will increase the number of references by focusing on more and more specific needs. And we define these needs and these potential new products by discussing with the clients, because we get all the data we can get with them via surveys or via other type of discussion we have online, for example. And at the end, the key metrics will be this lifetime value of the client, because if you got low churn rate and a lot of upsell in addition to your cheap or very affordable basic subscription fee, then you really create a solid revenue over time via this community of members. We are not purely online, so we are not a DNVB. I've seen somewhere, I cannot remember where, ONVB, or Omnicanal Native Vertical Brand, because we like retailers. We have the chance to work with very recognized retailers like Nocibé, Birchbox, Passion Beauté, Beauty Success, etc. And also, we try to nourish the relationship with the retailers based on the knowledge we have of what are the good vendors, how to answer the question, and how to bring to the market data-driven innovation, not based on a simple idea, but an idea which has been prototyped and tested with our customers. To go a bit further, we want to extend the product range. So on the top, we've got the existing one, and we've got all those innovations we have developed during COVID, because we kept this team motivated to create the future of Monsieur Barbier. We are also developing a new brand for women. This is not Madame Barbier, I reassure you. The branding will be very different from Monsieur Barbier, but we want to have the same kind of mechanism with women. And also we have some collabs. The first one was with Clarins. We developed with them Clarins Unlimited, which is a subscription to Clarins products. And currently we are working with two other actors in cosmetics to try to extrapolate this membership economy to new areas. And for the years to come, we are entering a market in Asia. So the first one will be Japan at the end of the year. And we have a first step with Monge in China right now. And also to consolidate, and that's very important for us, our tech stack, because we've done everything by ourselves, nothing on the shelf, big investment for us, but we can have the profit now from this investment because we are totally free to imagine lots of model thanks to this tech stack. So this was the presentation. I will be happy to share a little moment with you for Q&A. And sorry for my English. I do my best to go global, but that's a long way.
You didn't mention, sorry, are you raising money? Why are you? Because you've got a lot of priorities. You've got new lines, new business model in a way, because the collaborations, it's like B2B2C, and you've got Asia. So I've got the feeling maybe I didn't catch. You're not in seed, you're later stage.
Actually, some were instruments, like working with a big corporation to extrapolate the model. This is not our business model. This is what we do to finance the development of Monsieur Barbier. Our priorities are to extend the value proposition with new features for the website and new products, and to go to new markets like Asia or Europe. But right now, to finance this and to fuel this development, yes, we are in discussion to raise money, because we had a first little seed, I will say, 1 year ago. And now the business is going fast, and we need to enlarge the team and to consolidate the assets.
Thank you.
Maybe a few words about the community. How do you manage to leverage your community? And is this community loyal?
Actually, the loyalty rate, or which is the opposite of the churn rate, is impressive over time. We started, like everybody, with a very high churn rate, and we discovered step by step how to improve it. And now, actually, we don't solicitate them. They come to us very often. Why? Because it's more sociological than digital. When you receive a product of a brand every month at home, and you get used to spend time with the brand, quite mechanically, people will send some emails to us, some question, or will try to chat with us on the website, etc. So we have a lot of I will say spontaneous interaction with the clients, and that's the richest one for us, because that's a real need that pushes them to come to us. And the second part will be more analytic, I will say. We can see all the behaviors on the website, on the transaction with them. So once again, since we have our own tech, we have put a lot of indicator to follow them. And the last part will be during the prototyping. We send them sample of the prototypes, they test with us, they give feedback, and we've got 4 or 5 versions of the product before putting it on the market. And even when on the market, we have new feedback from the other customer, and we've got several versions of the product over the different batches. So that's a way to apply the agility that we talk about in digital, also to the manufacturing process.
In terms of team, how many are you at the moment?
We are 4. So that's also one of the reasons we need to expand. They are all behind. Vous êtes derrière ou pas?
Oui, oui.
Oh, yes, here. You can see the team. So, Emily, come on. This is L'Oréal. This is a World Congress. Emily, in charge of content. Mathieu, which is a pharmacist in charge of formulation. And Cécile in charge of logistics, but she's managing the deliveries for Christmas. So, so it's a small team. Fortunately, we spend a lot of time to develop Monsieur Barbier because it started 5 years ago. So we've got quite efficient processes to do a lot with a small team, but it doesn't. It's not enough to go really further because we need to have a specific person dedicated to specific goals. And yeah, we know how to recruit them, those ones, of course, but other ones in the future, we know them, we work with them as freelance, and one day we will gather everybody around the big boss, Monsieur Barbier.
Okay.
It was not scheduled. That was a kind of magic during live events. So you can see the mess in the office.
I have one question for you regarding the market. Have you seen any changes with the current crisis? And do you think it would be positive, negative, or how does it impact the business?
Actually, it's very positive for us, but that's a pain for me to say that because it's hard for the retailers. Really hard. Some of them, even in France, I don't know if they will survive to the second strike. But it's good because we bring service and comfort at home. So that's the kind of things people are looking for when they feel insecure outside, when they don't have any time. And especially in terms of services, we like the Amazon way of choosing clients. There is an issue, that for me. There is a delay, I give you a gift. Blah, 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 blah. We are here for you. We don't try to negotiate about one specific transaction because what we want, it's your love. It's not your money at a precise time. So it's quite strong to have this relationship with people. Some are very old. They are 75 and they cannot go to the supermarket to buy blades. So they were looking for the next venue of their grandson or granddaughter to have blades. Some are very young and active and rich guy, and they like the fact you have some fun because that's a very hard day. So all the brand is based on fun and complicity with the clients. So for many different reasons, we try to share the love, I would say, and to be a love brand with those guys, which is completely different to what you can see in other brands for men, because usually they sell virility and strength and the power to be the master of your life, blah, blah, blah. We just want them to feel comfortable with their look, with their lifestyle, and we bring a little bit of happiness every morning in the bathroom. That's the main goal of the brand.
Thank you. Thank you, Gwenaël.
You're welcome.
Hello. Alors, bonjour à tous. Je suis Marion, la cofondatrice de la marque Oden, que je vais vous présenter tout de suite. Alors, il y a 4 ans, j'ai pris conscience de l'opacité des formules des cosmétiques naturels que j'utilisais, mais j'ai surtout été extrêmement frustrée par l'impossibilité de savoir par qui, où, quand et comment les ingrédients naturels de ces formules des produits que j'utilisais avaient été cultivés. Une situation très surprenante, d'autant plus qu'aujourd'hui, la transparence et la traçabilité sont devenues les nouvelles exigences des millennials. Donc, de ce constat-là, j'ai fait un tour de France des agriculteurs afin de créer et de lancer Oden. Donc, chez Oden, nous créons des soins botaniques à partir de plantes cultivées en France, d'origine 100% naturelle et sans conservateur, et surtout traçables jusqu'au producteur. Nous vendons nos soins botaniques en ligne sur notre site internet oden.fr et à travers un réseau physique de plus de 100 revendeurs. Et l'entreprise est rentable depuis 2019 avec 4 salariés. Cette aventure est rendue possible donc grâce à notre superbe équipe composée de Laurence et Lucie, ingénieurs agronomes qui sont en charge des approvisionnements et de la production, de Jeanne, experte en marketing digital, qui a la responsabilité du développement des ventes, et de moi-même, Marion, néo-herboriste, qui parcourt la France à la recherche d'ingrédients naturels d'exception avant de les transformer en pépites botaniques pour nos clientes. Aujourd'hui, à court terme, au mois de novembre, nous allons ouvrir notre maison botanique à Paris, qui sera un lieu d'échange avec nos clients et qui nous permettra de mettre en place la consigne qui nous est demandée depuis 2 ans maintenant par nos clientes. Et au printemps prochain, nous ouvrirons notre jardin cosmétique, qui est un jardin pédagogique dans lequel nous cultivons les plantes qui composent nos produits en permaculture. Si je pitch aujourd'hui devant vous, c'est parce que nous cherchons à lever 500 000 € afin de financer notre stratégie d'accélération des 3 prochaines années. Et cette stratégie d'accélération repose sur 4 piliers. L'élargissement de notre gamme cosmétique et une nouvelle gamme de phytothérapie, le renforcement de notre réseau physique, un budget marketing publicité et surtout le renforcement de notre équipe. L'objectif d'ici 2025, très ambitieux, est de couvrir 1% du marché français de la cosmétique naturelle. Et chez Oder, nous avons aussi une vision très long terme qui est de décliner à travers le monde avec les producteurs locaux et les plantes endémiques pour qu'à terme, il n'y ait plus aucune frustration quant à la traçabilité des ingrédients naturels des cosmétiques. Voilà, c'est terminé. Je vous remercie de m'avoir écouté.
Bonjour, c'est Odile. Comment fais-tu pour différencier? En fait, j'ai bien compris la partie produit, mais je n'ai pas très bien compris à qui tu parlais en fait. Sur un marché qui est quand même assez saturé en France, j'ai l'impression que la dernière mode en France, c'est de lancer une entreprise dans les cosmétiques et si possible clean beauty. Comment tu penses en fait avoir un atout et une différence?
Alors, la différence, c'est vraiment nos ingrédients. Notre différence, c'est qu'on est, je pense, une des seules marques à aller sourcer nos ingrédients uniquement et en direct auprès des agriculteurs français. Ça, c'est la différence. Et ce qui, je pense, nous permet aujourd'hui de faire la différence et de nous développer malgré le contexte hyper concurrentiel, c'est vraiment l'authenticité de la marque et c'est notamment l'incarnation de la marque que je fais moi-même, qui est une véritable passion pour les ingrédients naturels. C'est-à-dire que vraiment, je suis passionnée par ça et j'arrive, je pense, à transmettre cette passion par les réseaux sociaux, notamment Instagram, qui est notre canal d'acquisition principal. Et ça, je pense que tout le monde, tous les jeunes entrepreneurs de la clean beauty n'ont pas cette passion véritable des ingrédients comme je l'ai.
Et du coup en termes de distribution, c'est online et offline. Sur le canal offline, comment est-ce que tu passes? C'est uniquement des détaillants spécialisés ou?
Non, c'est assez hétérogène. Au tout départ, en fait, pour l'instant, on n'a pas fait de prospection B2B. C'est les boutiques qui nous contactent également sur Instagram. On marche très bien dans des magasins de cosmétiques naturels, dans des petits magasins indépendants, tenus pour la plupart par des jeunes femmes de mon âge, qui sont de très bonnes prescriptrices. Ça marche très bien aussi dans des instituts de beauté. Et puis, on est aussi distribué dans des plus grands magasins comme les Galeries Lafayette, le BHV, Marais, puis bientôt la Samaritaine quand elle rouvrira. On est également dans le réseau Naturalia Origine. Il y en a 5 à Paris et là, on est en discussion avec Monoprix.
Sur la gamme de produits, combien est-ce que vous avez produit aujourd'hui et comment est-ce que vous voulez l'étendre?
Alors, on a une douzaine de produits aujourd'hui qui sont majoritairement des huiles végétales pour le visage, adaptées à des types de peau particuliers et à des âges, à des tranches d'âge. On veut développer donc dans un premier temps cette gamme cosmétique en proposant et en produisant nous-mêmes des produits qu'on appelle mous chez nous, c'est-à-dire notamment des masques, des gommages et des masques, des gommages, des baumes qui nous sont beaucoup demandés par nos clientes. On va aussi, on commence à regarder évidemment les huiles pour les cheveux et les shampoings. Et en deuxième partie, on veut vraiment développer une gamme phytothérapique et je pense notamment à des tisanes de plantes fraîches cultivées par nos agriculteurs partenaires qui permettent aussi d'obtenir une belle peau de l'intérieur.
Et les produits sont à quel niveau de prix?
C'est premium, on a un positionnement, je dirais, de affordable luxury, c'est-à-dire qu'on a un positionnement premium, mais on voulait vraiment, c'est notre volonté de départ, que nos produits restent accessibles quand même au plus grand nombre.
Et sur le côté des consommatrices, c'est qui normalement vient pour acheter le produit? Il vient de quelle marque? Il switch de quelle marque?
Alors, il y a plusieurs cas, plusieurs personas. Les premières qu'on a, je dirais, converties à Oden, c'était notamment des consommatrices de cosmétiques bruts comme les huiles végétales et les hydrolats, et notamment des consommatrices de chez Aromazone qu'on a, qui ont. C'était d'ailleurs le test, c'était de voir si, parce qu'on est beaucoup plus cher qu'Aromazone. Un exemple très concret, c'est notre huile de bourrache Origine France. Nous, on vend les 30 ml 28 € TTC, tandis qu'Aromazone va plutôt être sur 3 € TTC. Mais le switch fonctionne bien, a priori, parce qu'on a un taux de rétention de 75%. Et maintenant, on est en train de s'attaquer à des personnes qui étaient plutôt je dirais, dans des... Là, sans parler de marque, je parle plutôt de typologie produit. Là, on est en train d'attaquer des femmes qui avaient très peur de l'huile végétale. En France, c'est quand même encore un peu niche d'utiliser juste des huiles brutes pour la peau, finalement. Et là, on va chercher des femmes qui n'utilisaient que des crèmes et qui passent à l'huile.
Bonjour Marion, j'ai une petite question. J'ai bien compris qu'effectivement, ce que vous revendiquez comme valeur ajoutée, je dirais, par rapport à d'autres marques, c'est aussi un espèce de positionnement identitaire très fort par rapport à vos propres convictions. Ma question, c'est sur le long terme. Effectivement, ça, c'est quelque chose qui est sans doute très utile, notamment au début, quand vous portez la marque. Sur le long terme, moyen, long terme, vous allez avoir besoin de plus. Comment vous pensez pouvoir faire perdurer cette marque dans un environnement qui par ailleurs est très concurrentiel sur ce positionnement-là, un petit peu nature, etc.
Encore une fois, voilà, le positionnement nature, nous, on est convaincus qu'on va beaucoup plus loin que simplement le positionnement nature. C'est-à-dire que d'aller sourcer nos ingrédients directement auprès des agriculteurs français, évidemment, ça donne des cosmétiques, naturels, mais ça permet aussi de maîtriser son impact environnemental, ce qui est très important aujourd'hui pour nos clients, c'est-à-dire pouvoir consommer un produit qui est agréable, local, mais qui, quand on l'applique, c'est agréable, il y a un résultat, mais aussi, surtout, on sait qu'on n'a pas fait venir cet ingrédient de 4 coins du monde et donc son impact environnemental est maîtrisé. Il y a ça, puis il y a aussi l'aspect agriculture, c'est-à-dire que d'offrir de nouveaux débouchés aux agriculteurs français. Les agriculteurs français, ils s'y retrouvent beaucoup plus au final en vendant leurs ingrédients transformés à l'industrie cosmétique qu'à l'industrie agroalimentaire. Ils margent plus. Et donc, ça permettrait, et on le voit d'ailleurs avec Oden depuis 3 ans, de convertir des agriculteurs qui, jusqu'à présent, s'en sortaient pas très bien, notamment parce que ils vendent à l'agroalimentaire et ils vendent pas cher. On se fait régulièrement contacter depuis 3 ans par des agriculteurs qui cherchent à diversifier leur culture pour s'en sortir. Et donc, il y a aussi cet aspect-là, il y a vraiment cet aspect, je dirais même social, de soutien aux agriculteurs locaux qui respectent la biodiversité. Quand je dis qu'ils respectent la biodiversité, c'est-à-dire qu'on rend visite, nous, à tous les agriculteurs avec lesquels on travaille, et tous ont vraiment cette volonté de respect de la biodiversité. C'est-à-dire qu'on ne travaille jamais avec des agriculteurs qui sont en agriculture intensive. Et ça aussi, c'est très important pour notre clientèle. Et je pense que c'est des éléments vraiment différenciants qui vont faire vraiment la différence par rapport à d'autres marques clean beauty.
Très clair, merci beaucoup.
Hi everyone, I will try to share. Let's go then. My name is Diego Sam. I'm here today to explain how Reforestum wants to disrupt the reforestation industry through technology. This market, the voluntary market for forestry credits, has existed for decades. However, opacity, a general sense of mistrust, including some scandals, a scattered market, and an old-fashioned way of doing business has burdened the whole industry. But today, the confluence of the fourth industrial revolution and the great increase in the demand of reforestation projects due to thousands of companies committing to achieve net zero emissions is asking for an industry shift. Okay, Reforestum is building a next generation marketplace to palliate this lack of transparency, barriers to distribution, and the shortfall of projects visibility. And we accomplish this through one, monitoring projects by processing satellite data through AI that produce analytics such as carbon storage in near real time. Two, APIs that allow integrating carbon offsets in any online transaction such as e-commerce. And three, increasing the visibility of the projects through rich user interfaces and building a digital community that reunites all stakeholders. But the question, of course, is what makes it different. Many new platforms are emerging these days, offering either monitoring or apps for individuals to calculate and compensate their emissions. But none of them use a holistic approach to address issues of mistrust and distribution at scale. In our case, the cornerstone of our marketplace is the near real-time monitoring of the projects, which is the foundation used to build a digital community. The key elements of the community are both individual and the corporate profiles, built as a tool for companies to communicate their impact and engage with its customers and employees. Actually, these stakeholders, which are employees and customers, are also able to track the forest in near real time, whether they are just getting a traceable offset via e-commerce, are checking their favorite brand's impact, or are using the platform to offset their own emissions. And another unique feature is our capability to deliver bespoke forests for companies through our partners in Spain and also soon in other European countries, such as in France and the UK. Our business model combines fees for existing carbon credits that are distributed through the marketplace and corporate subscriptions inspired by SaaS models, both for our bespoke projects and the corporate profiles. In a base case scenario, we expect to be profitable in 2023 and generate 16 million revenue by 2025. So far, we launched an MVP and planted a pilot project in Spain and in north of Spain. Earlier this year, the paddle division of Adidas was the first client to integrate our API. We also signed a key strategic partnership with Ecosphere, which is one of the industry leaders delivering high-quality carbon credits from conservation projects in developing countries. And actually, together, we won the Trillion Tree Challenge by the World Economic Forum. And also, we will plant 37 hectares by the end of the year. As an important milestone was closing 600K in our seed round 2 weeks ago. But we're seeking to top it up to the maximum round, which is 715,000 euros. I went over time, sorry. Thanks for listening, and I'm looking forward for all your questions.
Thanks. Could you give us a business case, please?
Sorry? Could business case?
Yes.
For instance, in the case of Adidas, Adidas Paddle in Spain, they started by kind of like a subscription. So every month they pay a given amount to offset the emissions of their headquarters. Then next step was they actually integrated our API. So they are incentivizing users to register the serial number of some of their products. So when these users come to the Adidas website, they register, and in exchange for doing this kind of like step, they receive something that we call Forester. The Forester is kind of like the minimum or the smaller part of a forest that you can get as a customer, and that gives you the right to compensate over time. It gives you the right to all the credits that are generated to that given like piece of forest. And then as a next step, now in the fall, we're gonna plant 5 hectares for them, and they will keep on going with the same strategy using the API, but instead of sourcing their credits through our kind of generic forest, they will have their own corporate forest, so they can kind of create a story around it. So at the moment that we plant, we will go with drones. There will be a team filming how we plant the trees. You know, we will do some kind of branding around the whole thing for them to use as for their like media, communications, PRs, and so on. And the idea is that every year we will keep increasing this project for them.
Quick question regarding your competition and what's your added value compared to players?
Sorry, can you repeat?
As a question regarding the competition. So who are your competitors and what's your added value compared to them?
Yeah, so one of our biggest competitors is like Pachama, which was Y Combinator alumni last year, but they are focusing a lot in what we call MRV, which is monitoring, reporting, and verification. Basically, the tools that extract data from satellites, process through AI. They also use in drones. They're focusing a lot on that. They also have a small marketplace. Then we have other guys doing also like pure marketplaces, but they are sourcing their projects from like third-party providers and so on. Our idea is to create this holistic approach in the marketplace where we have the central piece is the MRP, like having like full traceability for every single project that is actually managed in the marketplace, and around it we build this community for the companies. We help the companies to actually to communicate the positive impact that they have and to actually to engage with the customers. The type of business model that we do, we call it B2B2C, because actually we use the APIs to connect with any online transaction. So in a way, the final customer is connected to the forest. So this is something that we do very differently. Normally, nowadays, you can already see many, for instance, airlines that can offer you a way to offset a flight. In our case, if you would do that through our API, the final customer doesn't perform any sort of donation. You get, again, what we call forester. So you have your own user. So you get attached to this like little forest, and then you can track the forest. No, so you are not getting a credit. We're making credits tangible in a way that the final customer gets ownership on a little part of a project. And like that, we close the cycle. And also, we think that this is also very good for the companies hosting the transaction, because it's also a way for them to gain visibility and to connect with their customers.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for this opportunity today. For all brands and publishers, digital advertising is vital to their business model to generate sales. But for society, and in particular for online users, digital advertising is nothing more than a nuisance that brings no value to them. As a matter of fact, brands spend an annual $385 billion globally in digital advertising that is actually blocked by 47% of users and rising. In 2020, the digital advertising industry will lose a whopping $78 billion just because of ad blockers. My name is Zahra Zafimeh, and I'm the founder and CEO of What Rocks, the award-winning Ads for Good label that bridges the gap between brands and online users. What Rocks basically helps users, and subscribed users to easily identify online ads that reward them financially when they see or when they click on What Rocks labeled ads on the internet. And with the money that they receive from these brands, subscribed users make donations to the charities of their choice from a list available on their What Rocks mobile wallet. So with What Rocks, digital advertising simultaneously creates business value for brands and social value for users. So to that purpose, brands actually use 1% of their advertising dollars that they're going to spend anyway to buy blockchain tokens called ROCs. And these ROCs are created exclusively by WhatRocks and designed solely to process donations. As users get money when they see or click on these WhatRocks labeled ads across the web, brands actually generate more views and more clicks with the same advertising budget. So in other words, brands do better by doing good with WhatRocks. So as the world's first ad for good label, WhatRocks is a highly scalable solution that supports all advertising formats across all the web. Subscribed users actually have no reason to churn out as they get money just by browsing the web, as they normally do. And even better, they're incentivized to refer friends to grow the WhatRocks community. And last but not least, WhatRocks has a very attractive pricing model, as there are no fees, no commissions on transactions. So I have designed this model thanks to my 20 years of experience, both as a tech and media entrepreneur and as a philanthropy executive, in the US and in Europe. I am the leader of a talented multicultural team, mainly based here in Toronto, Canada, with 14 seasoned software engineers, UI, UX experts, and business developers from Vietnam, from China, South Korea, India, Spain, Belarus, and France. We have received several prestigious awards from the tech and media industry because we are restoring the social acceptance of digital advertising. Also, as you know, we have recently joined the L'Oréal Acceleration Program at Station F to fine-tune and scale our solution internationally. Our technology platform has been thoroughly tested by global leaders, including L'Oréal, Nestlé, Publicis, Verizon Media, UNICEF, and more. And we are now licensed by the Swiss financial market authorities to issue ROCs as a regulated crypto asset. So today, we have more than 50 strategic clients and partners that are committed to support the launch of WhatRocks. And your investment will help us to go to the next step. We are thrilled to give you the opportunity to do well by doing good with a $1.4 million USD investment in seed capital to support our launch in France. Our investment will help us hire full-time staff, scale our technology platform, and grow our user base. So together, we will set WhatRocks as the norm for impact advertising, and we will change the face of the digital advertising industry for good. Any comments or questions?
Thank you. I have a first question, actually. Why did you choose France as the first test market?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. As a matter of fact, initially, we were supposed to do our proof of concept in New York City with Publicis. But when the global headquarters of Publicis in Paris actually heard of this project, and they said, no, this is too strategic. We're doing this here in France. So actually, as a matter of fact, I was already in touch with L'Oréal, the L'Oréal team in New York City, as part of this proof of concept. But Publicis, again, really seized the opportunity about 2 years ago and said, no, this is really strategic to the development and to the future of the digital advertising industry. So that's why we ended up doing this in France. I'm French myself, and I have a lot of business connections, of course, in France. So that really helped.
And in terms of the competitors, sorry, I don't know this market that well, so I will appreciate any insights. Is there anyone on the market who could be quoted as your competitor, who operates in that kind of area?
It's a very interesting question, because from a purely technology and solution standpoint, this is unique. This is the world's first. The only comparable solutions you would have out there are basically CSR programs. So you would have brands or even online publishers or ad networks who would say, hey, I'm going to take a portion of my profits to make donations to charities. But that's basically the only thing that you have as an ad for good label. You do have what is referred to as incentivized advertising. Typically, in the Silicon Valley, you have a company called Brave that uses advertising revenues to reward online users who use their very own web browser. But it's only to compensate and to pay content creators like bloggers or Twitchers, this kind of things. It's not to make donations at all. So they're basically in content monetization. We're the only one actually focused on supporting charities by making donations to the causes that you care about. So the short answer is no, we don't have any competitors because we are breaking new ground here with our solution.
And as a customer, can I choose charity?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you download our mobile wallet, you actually have access to a list of charities. So we currently have around 30 charities. Just to give you some numbers, if we take the French market, you have 1.5 million charities officially registered with the tax authorities. Our goal is not to have 1.5 million charities in our mobile wallet. Doesn't make any sense. So we currently have around 30, and our goal is to have between 1,000 and 1,500 charities in our app, so that you can donate locally, nationally, or even internationally across a wide range of social and environmental causes.
And who can give back? Is it the demand side, the sales side, both?
It's actually both. It's very interesting. The core of the concept, it's really brands that use a fraction of their media budget, of their advertising budgets, to reward users, because the brand actually makes a conscious decision to say, I know that I'm spending a ton of dollars, on ads, and I want to make sure that my ads are different because they do good to society. So I will show this label on my ad. So the label actually shows literally on the banner ad or on the video ad to say, hey, this ad gives you money to donate. And this is me as a brand that is, saying this to online users. But interestingly, we have strategic partners like online publishers like Verizon Media, Yahoo, Huffington Post, AOL. We have TF1, M6, Prisma, many online publishers who are saying, you know what, this is actually a great model because for the first time, you have a new narrative to online users to convince them to allow ads on our website. So we're willing to pitch in, and we will match the money that brands will donate, will give, to users. We will match this so that you as a user have an incentive to come back to their website. So they really see this as a loyalty program, if you will, because they will be rewarding recurring visits to their yahoo.fr or to femmeactuelle.fr, etc., etc. So it's literally both sides can actually pitch in and contribute to the funding of charities.
And how much money are we talking about? I mean, if I click, okay, I want to give to a charity, how much is it on average?
Yeah, very, very important questions. So because of the economics of digital advertising, it's a very small amount, it's nano transactions really, but a huge volume. It's billions of transactions every day, billions of ads that are served. As a matter of fact, in France, for instance, an average online user would be exposed to 5,000 to 6,000 ads every month online. And based on the revenue model that we've designed, these users, if all brands adopt the WhatFox label, each online user could receive between 10 to 15 euros a month to make donations. So what matters is not the individual amount of money that you receive for one given ad. What really matters is, okay, how many ads am I exposed to, and how many ads do I see or click on, and how much money can I get at the end of the month?
And how do you make money for your company? You take a percentage of the...
Yeah, well, our revenue model is actually very, very simple. What I like to say is we're a central bank without the liability on the balance sheet of a central bank. The reason for that is because these brands actually wire us a percentage of their media budget. So let's say L'Oréal Paris, for instance, has a $100,000 campaign for their next new mascara. And they're saying, well, I'm going to use 1% of that budget to buy rocks. So this is why we create currency very much like a central bank, because we are the ones creating these blockchain tokens. So 100% of the money received is our sales, is our revenues. And in return, we would credit the L'Oréal Paris account with the corresponding amount of rocks, meaning our blockchain tokens. And this is it. So it is very simple. We basically take a percentage of each advertising campaign.
Any plan to attack the US market, which is a big one, even if France has great corporations?
Absolutely. Well, to give you some numbers, so the French market is about $5 billion for digital advertising. Canada is around $8 billion, and the US is almost $80 billion. Sorry. So yes, by far the US is the largest digital advertising market. And the beauty of our company is that we're located here in Canada. So going to the US is obvious. We're incorporated here. And our goal is to pre-launch in France in November to December. and to launch in the US in March or April next year. And because our technology is all based on tags, I don't want to go into too many technical details, but it's basically cookies, first-party cookies and tags. So we're totally transparent to the whole industry. They use this technology every day. So it's very easy for everyone from every media agency, trading desk, DSP, SSPs, online publishers to use our technology. It's totally transparent. So that's why we can scale very rapidly internationally. As a matter of fact, we've already flown a campaign for LVMH, for Ruinart, the champion brand, that was in 7 countries, just with the same team, because we actually don't fly, we don't manage the campaign, we just provide tags. So it's super easy for us to scale.
And you mentioned that your traceability comes also because of the cookies. And what are your plans when the world becomes cookieless?
So interestingly, there's a bias in this understanding. It's not we're not entering a cookieless world. Sorry, we're entering a third-party cookieless world, which is very different, because you will still have a cookie on your laptop or on your mobile phone when you connect to Amazon, because that's the way they know who you are and give you access to your account. So same for Google, same for all these websites and e-commerce website where you log in, you need to have an account, so you have a first-party cookie. So we are very much like Venmo, right, in the US, or Lydia in France. You have to sign up. You have to download it, so open an account with us. So that's how we set a first-party cookie on your device, so we know who you are. And we can make sure that L'Oréal Paris will reward you financially with ROCs on your personal account and not on the account of somebody else. So we actually are totally immune to this whole third-party cookieless world, because we're, again, very much like Venmo or Amazon or Google that also manages, they manage these user accounts.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for your interest.
Thank you, Startup. We officially finished our first pitch event, let's say, and thank you so much for being here. I think it was very rich, at least for me, it was a very rich discussion, and I think the selection of startups was also very different from natural brands to membership business models to even going beyond the digital media opportunities, let's say. So it was very inspiring. Thank you everyone for connecting and spending your afternoon with us.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.